All right, so welcome to this lesson. This lesson is going to be about the fundamentals to finding your own vitality, finding human vitality, finding it out, because we are here to discover it, okay? The idea here is that we have to understand truth as something that can be found, that can be searched for, but that is somehow separate from a perception. So that gives us the possibility that we can see things differently in order to perhaps see truth more clearly. So I'm putting forward the idea that we may not have a clear perception of truth. Okay, and that's the number one prerequisite to beginning this course, because it's really not possible to discover something unless it is understood that that something is perhaps beyond our perceptual capacity. So in that sense, what I'm speaking of here is truth. What is true? What is human vitality? How to feel the most alive? That is a quality of life that must be sought after. And you must somehow, I think, on the pursuit to truth, I don't just think this, but I know that this is also a prerequisite to this journey, is you have to have some belief, a little bit of faith and a little bit of belief that the way you're walking will lead to a better world, that will lead to a better way, or at least that the way you're walking will lead to truth. And what could truth possibly be but then more connection to one's highest self, more joy, vitality, love, compassion, and joy, all the good stuff. So you have to have some belief. If you're in a place right now where you're like, yeah, I don't have a lot of that. Those qualities, I don't have much of. A lot of hate, anger, jealousy, greed, fear, anxiety, all that. This is usually where we start, because we go, well, I have negative qualities that kind of suck. And I'd really like to have the qualities that I see on some people who are happy. I want to be happy. I want to be joyful. I want to be loving, and I don't. Some part of the mind also might question, say, why do I have to be? Why am I like this? Like, why would Creator, God, even my own spirit decide to come into this experience and have such a shit time? That doesn't make any sense. And so if you can have a shit time, you can have a good time. Life is made of polarities. And so this lesson is about understanding the fundamental necessity that you must know the road you're walking. You have to know which road you're walking. If I tell you, oh, just do this, this, and this, and you don't get to know why. Like many detox coaches, many raw foodies, people who are helping others transition to other diets, they just give them protocols. They say, do this, do that, and it's, go raw, you'll feel better. But if you don't know why you feel better, if you don't know what road you're walking, there's all the chance that you'll fall off. Because, for example, you may think, well, it's about feeling good. It's about feeling good. Okay. And so I have so much experience in this. I know for myself that for many years, I pursued the path of raw and vegan, and I understood somehow that every time I would eat meat, dairy, or eggs, I would get, in certain products with pesticides, I would get inflammation in my lymph. I would get inflammation in my throat, and I would get different kind of like allergic reactions, you could say. But it was really just accumulation of the toxicity coming out of my body, because my body was fairly clean for a couple of years there. And so my body would immediately kick it out and show me like, hey, this is not good, or something's up here. So I had to kind of experience that. right? And the point I'm going to get to here is that for you, you may go on the journey of, okay, eating raw, and a lot of people, this is a very common experience. A lot of people go raw, they feel good for a time, and then they start to experience fatigue. They start to experience issues in their body. They start to get very skinny, okay? They start to lose weight too fast. And they don't feel optimal. They don't feel super strong, super powerful and vital. They feel, often it's like, I feel lethargic almost every day. And I'm eating raw. What's going on? Okay. And that goes on for some time. And some people, they push through. And then on the other side of of the rainbow is often higher vitality. But you don't know what's going on. Often what you'll do is you go, I don't feel good eating raw food after a couple of weeks, after a month or so, after 3 months, maybe a couple of years. So many people, they go back to eating meat, dairy, and eggs. Why? Because then this is what happened to me, is that I realized, okay, I'm feeling a bit lethargic a lot of the time, and I was eating vegan. Okay, I was eating vegan, but not unclean. I was eating clean vegan. I was eating, some starches, some grains, but also I was eating salads, and I was eating, not stuffing myself with a bunch of different starches. I was clean vegan, but I still just didn't feel like powerful. I felt good, but I didn't feel powerful. The lethargy, somewhat. Just, I didn't feel super inflamed, and I didn't feel super amazing. So let's put it that way. So I started to go down the path of raw dairy, raw meat, raw eggs. I started eating raw products, okay, that were from animals, and I actually started to feel better, which is interesting. I started to feel what I would consider to be better. I felt good. And I started going to the gym. I started working out. I had energy for that all of a sudden. And of course, that coincided also with starting to drink coffee and take more stimulants. Okay, so the journey continues. And actually, it's been about 2 years now where I really hardcore implemented meat, dairy, and eggs into my life. And I noticed, and I would have preliminary periods where I would eat only fruit and go raw again just to clean out my body. So this is interesting. Why would I do that? Because after a while, the meat, dairy, and eggs, I did notice lack of clarity. My mind would work on some days, most days, and I would somehow be dependent on my meals. I would be very dependent on my meals. If I hadn't eaten, I might feel very lethargic and very tired, or I would need to drink a coffee to get that stimulus. So that went on for the last 2 years of that kind of rhythm, and then going raw and eating a lot of fruit. I ate a lot of fruit with the meat and dairy and eggs. I had this theory that, you needed to stay hydrated, which is true. The gut needs to stay hydrated, and eating cooked food especially, you lose that hydration, and it can be very hard to digest it, and it's not that's even worse, So there are downsides to eating fruit with meat, dairy, and eggs. So down the line, down the road, now here we are after 2 years, what I've discovered, and this is part of the fundamental journey that I want to share with you guys today, or what I want to share with you today, is that what I experienced was not actually energy, not true energy, but stimulus. Eating meat, dairy, and eggs, what I was experiencing, and starches and grains, I was experiencing a stimulation that feels good for a time, but then it goes away, and then what's required is more stimulation in order to keep feeling good. So that requires 3 square meals a day, or 4, and then milk in the evening and whatever, eating a lot. You got to eat a lot in that format because I'm running on stimulant and coffee. And so what I ended up happening, and when I quit coffee for a couple months, I ended up having to eat breakfast. That was very important. I would always have to eat breakfast, eggs or something. And then I would have energy, which feels true, but it's not the deeper reality of the situation. It feels true that, okay, I eat the eggs in the morning and I have a more sustained energy throughout the day. It feels true. I eat lunch, okay, I have more energy. I eat this and that. If I don't overeat, of course, if you overeat, that's a completely different disaster of fatigue and lethargy. But so here's what I discovered. Right now, what I'm discovering, and this is a difficult journey, it's not an easy path, but to understand health, you have to understand what's going on. You have to be honest with yourself. There's two things to be honest about. The first is what makes sense. You have to be honest with what makes sense. For example, the number one thing that doesn't make sense, and what does make sense, is that humans should have to kill animals to survive. That doesn't make any sense. Because if you go into the Sahara, the jungle, what animal we look the most like is an orangutan, chimpanzee, primates. And you have to think, okay, but the argument is that we evolved from primates maybe because we started to eat meat. There's an argument there that we ate meat and that helped develop our higher cortexes. Okay, yeah, and then, but I would say this, to that argument, what doesn't make sense to me is that if the highest level mental capacity creature is a chimpanzee, orangutan, gorilla, blah, blah, blah. Maybe not so much gorilla, lower. But if the highest mental complexes were developed in those animals, then why are they only eating fruit? Why is their digestive system frugivorian? Why? Okay, so then they got so smart that then they started cooking their food. How'd they get so smart? Eating fruit. Okay, so then the idea that we had to cook, that we started cooking food and that developed our brain even further does not make any sense, because I don't know any carnivores that are getting close to having a mind similar to a human being's mind. Okay? So that to me doesn't make any sense. The logical progression of consciousness through, and I obviously believe that consciousness evolves through different life forms and somehow also helps to evolve those life forms and change them into different ones, and there's a correlation there. That we start as a lower form of consciousness, as gas, stone, worm, plant, animal, all the way up to a human being. This is the journey of the soul. The consciousness identifies with different forms of expression in the world, and eventually it's got this like itch to break free, and finally gets to human being, fully developed consciousness. Here, it's like you have all the senses to experience the phenomenal world, and so now becomes the inner journey, the involution of the soul, of the consciousness must become one again with its own self. And that's why we're human, and we are here for that purpose, to dissolve the suffering and the sankharas, the impressions of the ages and ages of incarnating as different incarnations through rocks, stones, and plants and animals, you name it. So we're here now as human beings, and we have the capacity to now involve, right? Instead of evolve, evolution, involution of the soul. This is the journey we're on now. And so part of that journey is to get the food right, okay? First, get your relationship with God right, obviously. But then once you have your relationship with God, this is not a video for getting your relationship with God right. If you don't have that right, go refer to some of my other videos, and I'll talk a lot about that. But in this video, we're mainly speaking about how to emancipate ourselves from the lower energies so we can have more God in our life, more truth, more connection to our soul, and do the work that really needs to be done in a lifetime, in all the lifetimes, really. And I'm not sitting here as some perfect master. I'm just sitting here as one who has the qualities and wants to develop those qualities, just like you, just like anyone else. We have qualities, good and bad, and we want to develop the good ones, not the bad ones. So you develop the bad ones by, eating density and speaking density and thinking density and doing dense things, negative things, stealing, taking what's not yours. So here's another one that I wanted to bring up in this video. It's very important. Another one to realize that all other sentient beings do not have the higher complex of morality. And if you look at a chimpanzee or an ape, they are the ones that are getting the closest to the potential to having a sense of morality. Why? Because, why exactly are they getting closer to that? Because their brain is closest to our brain. Duh. So now we have evolved from that species, let's say. It makes sense, doesn't not make sense, that there would be some kind of a change of evolution that could take an ape to a human. I don't doubt that. It makes sense. Maybe there's a leap, maybe there's a jump. Maybe we were dropped off here by some spaceships. I don't know. But I'll just say the primates that we look the most like ate fruit. Okay, so they ate fruit and they developed, their brain is very developed. We also have a very developed brain, yet we eat shit, right? We eat confused things. We eat things, we cook things. We're the only creature on the planet that doesn't know what we're supposed to eat, that cooks our food. No other creature is out there with a frying pan. You don't see chimps out there with a frying pan. They bang it on their head. They don't know what to do with that. It's pointless, stupid. But we're out there making chef meals and all this stuff and garbage, piling garbage into our intestines and expecting to get somewhere in life. No, it's not how it works. Okay? So we got to understand the number one, this is number one, and it's going to be morality. If you want to develop your consciousness, you have to step into a place of understanding true morality. So, you take apes, pretty developed brain, but not so developed that they necessarily have a sense of morality, right? It's not like they probably have a somehow intuitive sense of like what to do, not to do, but they still, they still get in fights. They're a little bit violent, all right? Human beings, of course, are very violent, but let's get to the point where human beings, there is a difference between, this is important, omniscience and ignorance. There's a difference between the two. With an ape, if it does something that's wrong, that's against morality, it doesn't know better, okay? Not only does it not know better, it can't know better. It doesn't have that complex developed in its brain yet, where it can really discern right from wrong. Now, there's some people that would argue there's no such thing as right and wrong, and I will completely disagree with that and say there is only such a thing as right and wrong. There is what you can do and there is what you cannot do. And if you do what you cannot do, you have transgressed the law. And when you transgress the law, it's a selfish path. The only reason that, let's just put it this way, it is in your best interest to do the right thing, to not do harm or wrong, to not take what is not yours, basically it's just to not steal, to not take what's not yours, right? You could say, well, I don't understand. What's morality? I say it's very simple. Morality is do no harm. Okay? Do no harm. Very simple. Don't steal. Don't take what's not yours. Right? What's not yours is whatever is not anyone else's. Does that make sense? Is whatever is not anyone else's. Think about yourself for a second. You're sitting, wherever you are, and someone comes and tells you, give me $100. You say, no, that's not yours. And so they say, no, you have to. And you say, why? This is morality playing out right there. You understand fundamentally you don't have to give someone money if you don't owe it to them or nothing. They just say, give it. What's their right to yours? What's yours? Okay? That's morality right there. And then they take it anyway. That's stealing. So think of it like this. Every creature on the planet has a right to itself, to and of itself. Okay? Every creature. When you're in the plant species, it's a much lower format of sovereign ownership, but it's still there. The truth is, all the way to the lowest level of air, there is an energetic charge of I-ness, okay, of I. And to transgress that law on all the different layers, from gaseous state all the way to animal to human being, there is an energetic charge to taking what is not yours, what is not given. Okay? Now, there's a subtle that you might say, oh my God, so then everything is immoral. I would say, yes and no. There is a very pure state in which everything is possible. It is possible to understand that everything is given. Everything is given that gives itself. Okay, so yes, there are stories, there are outliers to the story. You may say, okay, so you're obviously trying to say that it's wrong to kill animals, and I am not exactly saying that, but I am saying that in the sense that yes, if an animal is just minding its own business and you kill it, that you had no right to take its life. That's its life. That's not your life. The same with a piece of lettuce. It's growing. You take a piece off of it and you say, that's mine. The difference with the lettuce is that when you take the piece of lettuce and you don't kill the plant, you haven't taken what's not yours. Okay? What you've done, actually, yeah, you have taken what's not yours, but you didn't kill it. You did not take all of it. So this is where we're going with that. To understand that you still committed a wrong there. That's still wrong to take the piece of lettuce. Even if you put the tobacco or make an offering, doesn't matter. It's not yours. In that way, you have to acknowledge that most of the things that are around you are not yours. Okay? So to be able to understand that is number one. You have to understand what is morality. What gives you the right to a piece of lettuce? What gives you the right? But if you can't answer, then there is no right. You say, because I'm hungry. Well, that doesn't give you a right just because you're hungry. Someone might feel like murdering someone. That doesn't make it right that they kill them. Right? So even the piece of lettuce, even to pick a flower, is all immoral. You're not allowed to do that in law, under law. Okay, now it's not to say that you are any less immoral by picking a piece of lettuce than killing an animal or killing a human being. It is just as wrong, okay, to do so. It doesn't mean you don't do less wrong. Like you don't half kill somebody and then it's like sort of right. No, you either killed someone or you didn't, right? And if you kind of killed them, like you kind of cut them and they died, but you didn't like try to, it's like, no, you did that was wrong, okay? That was not your right to do so. So it's the same with all creatures, all things. And to understand that is super fundamental because you have to be honest with what's right and wrong. This is a very radical approach, but it's the only logic that makes sense. Otherwise, what gives you the right to pick the flower? Like what gives me the right to take that creature? It is in the earth, okay? So that's the fundamental, that's super understanding, it's super duper understanding the truth of it all, and that when you get into deeper meditation, you will understand that that's the reality. It's a very difficult reality to grasp because you want to put yourself in it. You want to say, yeah, but where do I stand in that? Like, how do I exist in this world if I don't want to even step on a blade of grass? Okay? So it's a valid question, but we have to first get to the very root. We have to get to the bottom of it, and understanding is just one step. So I say to you, this is where this is where it all leads. Yes, that may be true for me. Because of my own experience, I've seen how every individual, every creature has its own sovereign right to exist, and I don't have any right to take that. Even if I want to go from here to there, but there's some twigs there, that doesn't mean that I should go from here to there. Because I have to get there, okay, I'm going to trample all over. No, that is not right. And kill a bunch of plants on the way. No. So it's a crazy example, but it's the truth. That doesn't make it right. So that is my experience. That is the truth. You may say, well, if I look at it like that, he's right. But you can't imagine not walking across a field of grass. I mean, that's insane. And how do you live? Well, you say, yeah, but how would, I say, well, if something is broken beyond repair, like it's rusted through and it cannot function properly, fixing it is not the answer. You need to get a whole new one altogether. Fixing it will not fix it. So I say that if something is broken and it is beyond repair, don't fix it. If a car is 100% through and through done, finished, destroyed, don't try to fix it. Go make a new one. Okay? So that's number one to understand. So understanding the fundamentals are good. The second thing that you need to understand is that it is of utmost importance to have the experience of understanding what I'm saying. Understand morality for yourself. That is simply not to take what is not yours. Don't take what's not yours. It's very simple. Okay, now apply it, and you have to meditate on it and think about what that means. Okay, and we can come together and be, yeah, that makes sense. Morality is very simple. That makes sense. But now you might also say, okay, cool, but that's still not my experience. I may understand, but what about, I need to see someone experiencing it to know it's true. You see someone then, maybe a monk, experiencing peace, and it looks very good on them. It looks good. Peace may look, oh God. Peace may look really good on a monk. And so you see a monk and you go, wow, look how peaceful that monk is. Wow, this more, and he's practicing a moral life. He's meditating, doing less and less harm, doing less and less harm. It's working. Still, you have a problem. You have a big problem here. Even though now you understand morality, you see, yes, that makes sense. Then you see a person living it and you say, wow, that really looks good. You know, he looks peaceful. Whatever he's doing is working. It looks like he's living a moral life. Good. Still, it's not your experience. So now comes the third level, the highest level of your own stepping on the path yourself. You can see a million people walking on the path. That's no path for you until you're on it and walking too. So the number 3 is to start walking the path. Start living. You understand morality. You see it works. Now try it. Give it a try. Try to do things that you would consider correct in a moral standpoint, in a moral way. Because if it doesn't make sense to you, how can you live according to it? You can't live out of accordance with something that you can live out of accordance with things. But if you don't know why, how are you going to be able to walk the path yourself? I'm not going to give you a fish. I'm going to teach you to fish here. So once you understand that morality is simply don't take what's not yours, start walking that path. What does that look like for you in an embodied way? Okay, so how do you walk that path? Can you not step on grass? Can you be careful not to kill bugs? Can you be careful not to take the lives of animals, not to encourage the taking of the life of the animal by eating the flesh of it and then creating more of a demand for it? What ways can you start to live a moral life and see for yourself if, and not steal from people and not lie to people, because also giving false information is not moral. It's not right. It's taking what someone could have had. Either don't tell them something, although you can't hide things from people that they need to know. This morality is truly being 100% open, okay? Having a 100% opened heart. To have a 100% open heart, you need to start walking on the path. How to start walking on the path? You have to start living a moral life. The more you live a moral life, you'll find your heart starts to open more and more and more. And you will find that as it opens more and more, you become aware and capable of perceiving more of the subtleties of morality. And you will feel what is right and wrong. You'll feel intuitively more and more the truth of it. And it won't just be from here, I'm living a moral life. You'll be living it. Okay? So for example, when I was eating a lot of meat, that is not moral. It was not moral for me to be doing that. But what I found was the more I did it, the less I felt my heart. The less I felt that it was really that bad. Because what happens when you live a very immoral life is you become numb. Because you're not listening to the higher complexes of your mind that were fabricated from the time when you were living a very, very moral life. The point is that from chimpanzees, orangutans, our higher complexes developed over millennia, after millions of years of living in dense jungles. The ecosystem, the biosphere provided such immense quantities of good quality fruit and nutrients. Good soil, good trees, strong trees create a nervous system and a structure and a brain that is able to perceive the higher levels. And so human being starts to come to be. And from that place, we developed a sense of morality, of right and wrong, over time even. It's a development, because still you're kind of coming out of animal sankharas in that state. You're kind of coming out of it, and at some stage you come out of it enough to start to really understand and feel what is right and wrong. What is right and wrong? You start to feel that. start to have the complex at least to begin that journey. And so here we are, and it's time to wake up. It's time to wake up for a lot of us. We got to wake up. And the reason we got to wake up is because you can't take steps on the path unless you take steps on the path. So it's until we take those steps that things won't make sense. They won't. Nothing will make sense until you start taking your own steps. You might make sense, but it won't be an experience for you until you truly take those steps. For me, example, and it's not a linear path. It's not a straight line. It's a spiral. You have to experience, you have to learn it for yourself. Life is made up of polarities and paradoxes and also contradictions. You have to watch out for contradictions. There's a difference between a contradiction and a paradox. In a contradiction, you have an issue, two opposing thoughts that don't make sense, that cannot be reconciled. Cannot be reconciled is super important. Because if it cannot be reconciled, then what is irreconcilable about it is its lack of making logical sense. And it's like saying, a great example of a contradiction is it's wrong to take the life of an animal and then saying, but I have to. And that's a contradiction. You say, well, it's wrong to do that, but I have to do it, so I do it. I have to, but it's wrong. So then it's a contradiction because you can say, why is it wrong then? And then you could say, and couldn't you not? If you have to, that implies, so that contradictions can always be broken down and understood for their contradicting nature, for their basically for their falsehood. So you say you have to eat animals to survive. Do you have to? And if it's wrong, you get to a scientific standpoint of, oh, you have to. And then you get to this point, well, it is wrong. That doesn't make any sense to take the life of an animal. Anyone who does it knows that's not right. That's not right. Anyone who does it and doesn't think that is very numb and can't feel. But give a little girl a knife, it's not going to kill the bunny rabbit. It's going to pet the bunny rabbit and give it carrots, okay? So if a little girl can't kill a bunny rabbit, then how exactly are human beings supposed to eat meat? Doesn't make any sense. So it's just a contradiction. It's a contradiction. It's like you have to, and yet little children can eat. Don't like, if you put on a table a bunch of fruit and a bunch of meat, the child is going to veer away from the meat. It's going to eat the true meat of existence for human beings. Watermelon, melon, grapes, all the good stuff. That's human food, obviously. We were tree creatures for a long time. We lived in jungle and forest, and we survived solely on fruit and maybe some sweet crops. But for a while there, yeah, that's what developed us. And that level of awakening that happened in the mind of man happened through fruit. And in some sense, it was that moment where they became aware of good and evil, of right and wrong. And it was in that development that gave us the capacity to understand what was right and wrong. And somehow it that development of the mind also gives way to a whole avalanche of human experience that wouldn't have been possible to experience consciously as a creature, as an animal. So what happened is, after you start to develop that mental complex of of awareness of good and evil, of right and wrong, there is a natural percussion of, when you do wrong by your own actions, there is a percussion of having to go down that road of what that creates. When you're aware of it, it settles in your in you somehow, and over time it accumulates and it creates a lot of negativity, because the law is the law, and we have to live according to it. So that's where I'm going to stop, because it's a long video already. But yeah, that's the first segment really, is understanding morality, understanding that. And then of course my whole in knowledge share about how we are fruitarians and all that is super important to understand, where it all comes from, why, and how we developed. Do your own research. That's just tit for tat. What makes sense to you, keep it. What doesn't make sense, look into it. And ultimately you have to do your own research. Ultimately you have to experience it for yourself. You have to do the work to eat the kind of food that I'm proposing that we're supposed to eat, and see how you feel. And I'm not saying you can only eat that. We're human beings, and that is what this journey is. It really is understanding that how this lifetime and many other lifetimes, our fathers' lifetimes, we've eaten food that is very different from our human food. So don't expect to necessarily get the benefits of eating your natural diet all at once, because you're going to have to break through all the intestinal waste and physical waste that eating the unnatural diet would accumulate in the body, because it doesn't eliminate properly, because it's not the food we're supposed to be eating. We're not carnivores, and we're not starch eaters. But if you do, and you, it's fine, But again, consequences of crossing the law of not keeping the laws of nature, the laws of life. That's where we run into problems. And I know this video is a bit scattered. There's a lot of different elements here that need to be picked up upon. But if you have any questions about certain things, please leave them in the comments, and let's get into them. Everything I've said here, I can definitely not just back up, but I can vouch for it with my life. Like I'm not speaking from a place of just necessary. It's a bit of theory in some sense, but it's my own experience, and so it's also open to interpretation to some degree. And a lot of the things I say are on the spot, and so that means that yes, they're true, but sometimes there's circumstantial truth about them, and sometimes there is a universality to them. Yeah, there's many depths to knowledge, but that doesn't mean I'm not gaslighting the truth of what has been said here. It's just to simply say that a lot of times if you take stuff out of context, for the most part, it can lose its value. So inside of the context of what I'm sharing, these are the fundamentals that really brought me up and started me on this journey to walk where I'm walking, to experience what I'm experiencing. I'm not, however, saying that you're a sinner or you're a bad person if you break the law. The natural law, morality. I'm not at all going to say, well, if you were here and I heard that you were doing all these wrongs by killing animals, I'm going to be like, you're such a bad person. That is not how it works. That isn't at all how it works. And that's not at all what I believe, because I've done terrible things in the sense of killing it. I haven't killed an animal, but I've eaten lots of animal flesh. And, I've stolen things, and I've done things that aren't what I would consider right. And I've lied, and all the things. I've done all the things, just like all of us. So it's important to understand, I don't look at anyone like you're a bad person or this or that. I just look at you like you're just the same as me, and we're walking the same path to the degree that we're walking it. And we're here to truthfully, honestly, just step into the light. And from the darkness into the light, always, wherever we are, whatever we're moving towards. You may be in the dark, I may be in the dark. Move to the light. The more you embody light, the more the darkness can come up. You can give light to it. You want to be moving from light to light, from darkness to light, but never from light to darkness, and never to darkness to darkness. So that's really what we're here to do. And so we're here to hold each other's hand and help each other up, and that's it. We're not really here to, we're not all here to judge, but we're here to discern and definitely disintegrate. And dissolve and understand things for what they are.